so excited. Welcome to Together with a Wife Like Me. I'm Amanda Davison, and we are joined this evening with our friends. If you don't know them yet, they're going to be your new friends tonight. We have Amy, Carroll, and Lynn Cowell with us. Hey, ladies.
Hello, hello.
Yeah. Say, ladies, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, you can comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing where you are all at. I'm in Minnesota. Both Lynn and Amy are in North Carolina. So we're kind of spanning some space already. But we love knowing where you're watching from. We are talking about their Esther Bible study tonight, which we are going to be giving away 2 copies tonight. I'm so excited. 2 of you are going to win a copy. It's Esther, Seeing Our Invisible God in an Uncertain World. If we don't need this, we're not breathing. Like, we all need this, so much, because this is like, it's just the reality of our world, let alone in our own homes, in our own relationships, and in our own marriages. And so I'm so excited for this conversation. Why don't we just begin by introducing yourselves, ladies, for those of watching, listening tonight, who aren't familiar with who you are. Could you just share a bit for us?
You go first, Lynn. This is how it always goes, Amanda. It's going to be fun and awkward.
We're
Lynn,
just
you
two
go.
guys, both of you. Yeah.
Hello.
I love it.
Okay, I'll go first. All right, so I'm Amy Carroll. I'm a speaker and writer with Proverbs 31 Ministries, and I am the co-author of our Esther Bible study with Lynn Cowell, who is my real life friend and my ministry partner. So what a delight that has been.
And I'm Lynn Cowell. I'm also a speaker and writer with Proverbs 31 Ministries. And one of the best things that's brought into my life was Amy. So during COVID, Amy and I were talking about Esther and felt like, hey, let's write a Bible study together. And it's so fun when you get to do ministry with a friend.
Yeah, how cool. Like, how special is that? And actually, I was asking before we hopped on live tonight, like, how did you begin writing this? Like, where did this kind of come from? And one of the things that you said right away is actually like, Amy, you kind of had a hesitancy with wanting to write it because you had this idea about Esther and who she was, and that you found that there were things that you needed to sort of unlearn. Could you share about that?
Yeah, well, so Lynn and I both we do not consider ourselves girly girls. So Esther just seemed too Disney princess, two tiaras and tutus, and from the story that we had learned on felt boards and after growing up in church, it honestly was never a story that drew me very much. I know that there are tons of women who say, "Oh, Esther is my favorite book in the Bible." I never felt that way, and neither did Lynn. But Lynn saw something. We were on kind of a journey together of learning and engaging in our community, me through racial equity conversations, and Lynn with women coming out of incarceration. And Lynn saw something really important. So Lynn, I'll let you share that.
Yeah. So Amy had been sharing with me this process that God was taking her through, which is, for those of us who use our words a lot, was kind of a reverse. And that process was listen, feel, do, speak. For many of us, the do and the speak tend to come up front. But what Amy was learning was that listen and feel actually come first. And Amy kind of felt like this was a thing that God had given her, an Amy and Jesus thing. And I was reading through my Bible in a year and came to the book of Esther. And as I'm reading Esther's story, it was like it just jumped up off the page to me that this process was the process that Esther went through. The process, the pathway of listen, feel, do, speak. And so then when I shared with Amy, what I had seen, it just, from there, just kind of was an organic thing to write a Bible study about that pathway, as we began to see Esther as someone totally different again than what we had grown up hearing about her.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things that we talk about a lot here at A Wife Like Me is this kind of this tension. Like a lot of us, we would like to assume in our Christian circles and our churches and our friendship groups, wherever we're at, that we have great marriages, that we're married to, that we have husbands who are, engaged in their faith, they're following the Lord, they're surrendered, they're excited to go to church on Sunday, open up a Bible study at home, devotionals as a family, that kind of thing. The
Mhm.
reality is many wives aren't experiencing that.
Mhm.
And or many are just feeling like, they're the ones more engaged in their faith. They're the ones kind of initiating maybe a small group study, or heading out the door to get to church or things like that. And then there's some that they're married to men who really aren't, following Jesus at all. So
Mhm.
I'm curious what you learned about Esther in how she navigated that, and what that looked like for her, and what we can learn from that.
Amanda, as I looked at this question and I was, kind of trying to put down some notes, my first few thoughts were, I had gone through something like that. And then as you were talking just now, I thought, you know what? It's not a had been, because even when we are in marriages with spouses who are spiritually engaged, with which my husband is, there are still seasons when it's, come and go, when, you're closer, you seem more engaged to the Lord during a certain period of time, or your spouse feels more engaged. So I kind of want to, let go of that myth that once you arrive, it's always going to be that way.
Right.
Because life's hard. And when hard things that are real hit our family, we respond differently, and one might gravitate closer to the Lord, one might gravitate toward anger, and in those seasons, um, marriage is just a real flexible kind of thing. But in particular, in my first 25 years of marriage. Greg and I've been married 35 years. I really saw myself as Greg's Holy Spirit.
Mm.
So I would, hey, if there was a men's meeting, I would make sure and clear his calendar for him so that he could go. I'd make sure, his Bible was next to his bed in case he wanted to read it before he went to bed. Would kind of nudge him during the volunteer conversation on Sunday morning. Just almost seeing it as my responsibility to help Jesus draw Greg closer to himself. And one of the things that I did was a lot of talking, lots and
Mm.
lots of talking. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the first things that intrigued me about Esther was that as we read Esther's story, and you know what? It only takes 45 minutes to read her whole story. So I really encourage you to do that. In Esther chapter 2, there's 3 texts in which it says that Esther won the favor. Esther won the favor, and she won the favor of 3 people. She won the favor of the eunuch who was in charge of the virgins in the palace. 2:15 says she won the favor of everyone who saw her. And then 2:17, the king, who would eventually become her husband. And as I looked back on that, I was like, what was she doing that she won the favor of all of these kinds of people? And you know what she wasn't doing a lot of? Talking. She wasn't
Mm.
doing a lot of talking. In fact, my favorite verse is Esther 2:15, where it says that Esther did everything that Haggai the eunuch told her to do. So in other words, what Esther was doing was she was humbling herself, and she was listening to someone who knew more than what she knew. And so I think for you and I, especially in those bumps in our marriages, when they feel so uncertain, where you can't tell, like, who's leading, is anybody leading, are we actually praying and seeking God together, are we just trying to do the best we can during those times of uncertainty? What I've begun to focus on is what I saw Esther focus on, and that was obedience. That my part is obedience, God's part is the outcome. And for me, in particular, that first stage of obedience really has to do with listening, with doing a lot less talking and a lot more listening, and not just listening so that I can get the information I need so that I can talk more, but actually listening to understand Greg better.
Hmm. Yeah, well then, okay. It's, it sounds so good. And,
It does.
it's true. Like we've talked about that. That's like what our main focus is here at a wife like me, is to focus on only what we can control, which is our own responses, our own walk with the Lord, like our own. I love what you said, how Esther wasn't talking much. She focused on her obedience. And that is what she did instead of focusing on trying to get all these other things to be worked out, her husband to fill in the blank. And that's just, I think we need that real life example from Esther. And then I want us to all be encouraged that that is actually possible for us personally. Like we can see how she did that. And then we can actually want to and decide to begin to live that out ourselves. Amy, how is that? Oh, go ahead. You're going to
I
say
just
something.
had a thought, and we've been studying Esther for how many years now, Lynn?
At
Almost
least two.
3, right? Yeah. And I've never thought about, well, Esther was married to an unbeliever. I mean, she was
That's
a
right.
believer married to an unbeliever. And yet her marriage was happy enough and good enough that when she approached her husband, he extended her grace and favor.
Mm,
And he was a really volatile guy, really, really scary, volatile guy with complete power over everyone around him. And some of your people listening might be married to a very volatile man.
mm,
What Lynn gave us, I think, is such a huge key. I had not thought about it in terms of marriage specifically. So thanks, Amanda, for kind of,
Mhm.
changing the context for us to look at it in a new way too.
mm. Yeah, I think it's just again, I think we can say these things and then want them to, but then the actual, like when it comes to the nitty-gritty of, we're in the kitchen or we're driving and we're on the phone or whatever, or it's Sunday morning or whatever that looks like for us, then it's when like that's the realness of the obedience. Like, am I actually going to surrender this? Like what I want to say, what I want to do, or am I going to choose something different? And as we step in and lean into that surrender and that obedience, then we're going to, again, not necessarily see the outcome that we desire even, but we ourselves personally will grow in our faith journey as we obey in those ways. So I just love that she's this example for us. That's awesome. How about like partnership then? Because you were just saying, Lynn, too, I love how you said that there are seasons, for I can look back in our marriage and see there are different times where my husband is, fill in the blank, like he's waking up earlier and he has more energy and he seems like just things are clicking for him and he seems so near to God in many ways. And then I'm sort of like, needing that. I'm encouraged by him and then vice versa. But I love that there's a partnership that you see from Esther happening with Mordecai. Can you talk to us, either of you, about what you learned and how that can translate into our marriages?
Absolutely. Well, this was one of the beautiful things that we saw especially towards the end of the book of Esther. In churches, we tend to kind of stop at about Esther 4. The king
Mhm.
extends the scepter. She lives after all. Everyone is saved happily ever after. But there are several chapters after that that go into great detail about how Esther and Mordecai worked together to bring
Mhm.
about great good in the kingdom as a whole, but most particularly for their people. And it is beautiful to start just looking at it through that lens that Mordecai did some and Esther did some, and then Mordecai did some and Esther did some, and theirs was not a marriage relationship. He was her uncle who had raised her, kind of foster father kind of situation, but it's still beautiful to see that between men and women. And in the Esther book, in the speak section, I talk about that I had this really unexpected season of my life. And because I said yes to being on a pastor search committee. And there may be groans amongst those who are listening. And that's what I thought too. I was like, this is a white knuckle act of obedience because I'm stepping into something I just know is going to be terrible. But it wasn't terrible. It was actually the most beautiful season of my life of watching men and women work together on this committee. I had never been in a setting where there was so much mutual respect, where everyone's voice was heard and valued. And it kind of just gave me this little glimpse into what is possible. And Genesis 1:27 says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And so if we think about the conception of male and female, so we have this God who encompasses and embodies everything that is male and female. And yet he decides to put them in two different genders. And so what I've been realizing more than ever before is that when one, either the male or the female, is missing, we're not going to hate on our brothers either, that we do not have the full image of God unless both are represented in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, in our workplaces, that when men and women work together, when there's mutual respect, when every voice is heard and valued, amazing things happen, when the giftings are unleashed. And that is my heart's desire because I've been writing a lot about women. I have Women in the Word Wednesday, and I've been writing about that. And my desire is to talk to, I don't care what you think about positions and titles. It's really irrelevant to me. What I want is us to all walk in the fullness of who God created us to be. And what if that started in our house?
Yeah.
With our husbands. Another beautiful, if you're like, well, but that's not a marriage relationship, one I've been taking a look at in the New Testament is Priscilla and Aquila, who were a married couple. And there's not tons about them, but if you do a little word search for Priscilla and you read all the way through, there is this picture of beautiful partnership where both of them together are better than separate. And their gifts together are so complementary that they really are part of the foundation of the early church.
Yeah. It reminds me of what you were saying, Lynn, not long ago, or at the beginning, where there can be both. Like when we are experiencing the beauty of both husband and wife respectfully, like I feel like as a wife, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think I hear from many of you, it's almost like we desire that ourselves. Like, yes, I want to be heard. I want to have my voice valued, in all areas, right? And then we have to remember that along with that, like Lynn, you were saying the first however many years of your marriage, which I can totally relate to that requires then us to value their voice as well. It requires us to value and respect what they feel and think and, all the things as well, even about the dishes and about the kids and about all the things that we think we know best about. It also requires then us to do the same thing to them. That's the beauty. That's the picture that we can move toward in marriage. It just requires us both to be submitted and surrendered to the Lord over our own preference and desires, right? And,
just that? That's it?
No big deal.
Yeah, that's okay, right? It's fine. But I love that. And it should kind of like stir an excitement in us, to want that for ourselves and for everyone around us, right? I love that. Again, ladies, if you're just joining us, the Esther Bible study, Seeing Our Invisible God in an in an Uncertain World is out. We are giving away 2 copies tonight. The link is in the comments. At the end of this, at the end of the interview, I'm going to give 2 copies away. And you can grab it now. What I do love about this study is it's set up so simply for anyone to grab it, invite a few gals, or open it up in their church or whatever that looks like, and just go through all the questions. Everything like is guided in here. It's so beautifully done and beautiful. All the fonts and anyway. So I just love it. I would love to know for both of you, would you mind sharing like your number one lesson you've learned in marriage or are learning?
I love, Amanda, how you said, or are learning. Because some of us are really slow learners. Like I said, I've been married 35 years. And I remember when I was pretty newly married, I'd been married for a couple of years. And one of my sisters who had been divorced, one day very casually said to me, Lynn, it's really important that you speak your mind and that you are honest now. It's really important that you're honest now. And I thought, I am honest. I mean, I'm honest. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized I have not been honest in my marriage at all. I've been dishonest, in fact, from everything from, do you want pizza or Chinese tonight? Trying to read his mind. Well, whatever he wants, I'll pretend. Pretend I want pizza because I know he wants pizza. I mean, I know that sounds small, but when we are so not true with our spouse, those little tiny things in the early days of I just want to please him, I just want to make him happy, they grow. And it grows into a pattern. And it hasn't been only probably in the last 5 years that I've realized how often I have not been honest about everything from, when we try to decide between public school, Christian school, or homeschool, like every single topic, fear of disappointment, ruled my every response and how I interacted. And the really tough thing with that is at some point you're going to be honest. And unfortunately, if you wait too long, that looks more like a volcano exploding with anger and bitterness coming out rather than, learning, earlier on how to be honest. So I would say I've been really working on this probably in the last like 5 years. And my poor Greg, I'll call him my poor Greg. When I first started like actually speaking my mind, I think he was like, oh my gosh, who is this? Because I had gotten that deep into trying to be a peacemaker. So again, I really wish I had taken my sister's advice that long ago to be honest about the little things, because when you're not honest about the little things, you will end up not being honest about the big things.
Thank you for that, Lynn. I'm curious, do you know what number you are on the Enneagram by chance?
Oh, honey, I know. I am a 3 wing 2. And us 3s can be awesome fakers. Just saying.
Well, and I'm thinking too, it looks virtuous. And women in the church, I mean, we could just talk a long time about how we're encouraged to maybe not be honest.
Right.
Sometimes. Yeah, because it looks super virtuous.
Well, there can be some confusion there to where it looks like submission. I mean, instead of, yeah.
Yes. That's what when you were talking, I was thinking about that. I was thinking, I wonder if that's more, something you've learned or something you just innately, that's just who you are. You tend to just prefer and help naturally, or both, but that's interesting. Yeah.
Well,
And
the image is really, really important to you, then you want to project the image even to your husband that you're an easygoing, kind of gal, but man, you can only fake it for how many years?
Yeah. Performing is exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, that was I was gonna say exhausting, and then you did.
Mm.
Mhm.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Amy, how about you?
Um, this is a lesson it took me way too long to really learn too, and I'm still working on it. I fell a little short today, so I'll confess in a minute. But the truth is that has really helped me is Barry really is on my team. I
Mhm.
am fiercely independent. And because of a broken engagement in college early on in my marriage, I was fiercely self protective.
Mm.
So I always felt like I was protecting my territory, and it was super damaging. And I mean, some of it is personality, like you were just saying, how much of this was learned, how much of it was personality. Some of it's just my personality. I mean, today Barry and I were having this great conversation. He was doing a long distance drive home, and we were chatting about some things, and he started asking me some questions about an area that we've had some a conflict over, and I felt myself immediately start getting defensive. And I got quiet, and he goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm breathing because I feel myself getting defensive." And he goes, "Well, I don't want you to get defensive. I just want you to talk to me and tell me about this." And I was like, "I know you're not the problem at the moment. Like, just let me breathe and let my defenses go down." And I
Mhm.
had in that moment, I was reminding myself, Barry's actually on your team, like all
Mhm.
the time. He's great that way. And so, um, if anybody else is listening that is like me and is kind of that fiercely independent girl, but also maybe fiercely self protective because of some past hurts or just fear, just remember that we need to remember our husbands are on our team.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, ladies, I really I have been hearing so much. I know COVID is different now. We're back into the rhythms, hopefully, for the most part, right? However, I know that many of you are still feeling alone, still feeling like, I just haven't found my people like since all of that has kind of gone down in the world. And so, if you are one of those women, and I know you're there, I get emails from you. I encourage you, please go get the Esther Bible study because, again, this is a way you can actively take a step to not feel alone anymore. And
Mhm.
you will grow so much from it. And it's, again, all laid out for you. You don't have to get another companion study or anything. It's all here. So just get a book, 2 or 3, and then invite some gals with you to go through it with you. Speaking of that, I do have 2 Esther studies to give away. So the first winner, Nicole Ray, you won because last week you shared a video and the post. And so Nicole, watch your inbox. And then Selena Stallions. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Stallions, something to that effect. Watch your inbox as well. You are winning a copy of Esther, and you'll also get something extra in there because that's just kind of what we do. More love, right? But I would just love, ladies, if you wouldn't mind, one of you just praying over the women watching, and then we will close out for tonight. Feel free to.
Lynn's our prayer warrior. We gotta get Lynn to pray.
All right.
Father, you are so kind to us, and you have positioned us exactly in the marriages that you knew that you would use us in, and that our spouse would be used in our lives as well. Lord, we ask that we would be disciples of yours in your word, because that is where we are going to learn these tools that we need. This is where we're going to hear from you, Holy Spirit, each and every day with what we will need for that day in our relationships. And so, Holy Spirit, we ask you to move us, to fill us, to speak to us. Help us to become more and more discerning, to hear your voice throughout the day. Make us ministers within our marriage, and to see our partners as someone that you've placed in our life to minister to, as well as to be ministered to by them. We just confess to you that we definitely fall short. We don't get it right all the time. And I thank you that even when that happens, that you love us and you are for us and you are empowering us to become more like you, because that's more than anything what is going to make our marriages work, is the more we look like you. We love you, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everyone. I would just love, would you ladies each share where women can find you? And then also, I'm sure Esther is on your site. So where can women get in contact with you?
They can find me at amycarroll.org or at Amy Dome Carroll. It's AMYDOHMCARROLL.
And I'm at lynncowell.com. And I hang out most of the time on Instagram, again, at Lynn Cowell. And you can find out more about our Esther study at estherbookstudy.com. Amy and I are going to be hosting an online Bible study in the new year, and it is going to be simple. That is the theme of the Bible study, is we all don't need more stuff to do. We just need someone to come alongside us as we spend time with the Lord on our own. So again, on online Bible study starting in January, and the key word there is simple.
Yeah, if you go and put in your email there, you'll get all the information and you get the first week for free.
Awesome. That link one more time, and then I'm going to post it in the comments as well. It is estherBiblestudy.com.
estherbookstudy.com.
Estherbookstudy.com.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
Ladies, thank you so much for spending time with us. I sure adore you both. And all of you watching, again, just a reminder, we're here every single Sunday night. We have all of these amazing guests on to share wisdom with us so we can grow in our faith and in our marriages. And each week we're doing giveaways. So share this post, share or tag some wives as well to be entered for next week's giveaway. We just want to spread the love, spread the good news, and help other wives grow as well. So thanks for spending time with us, everyone. And Lynn and Amy, we love you. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye, everyone.